Thank you, Mark. Thanks a lot for a really nice segue into the panel session. So for that session, I'm going to be joined by 3 other colleagues. In addition to Mark, Mark's going to remain. So we have Stefan Hanloser, who is Vice President Data Protection Law, ProSieben Sat.1. Stephanie Hanson, Director OneTrust, PreferenceChoice, and Sascha Dolling, Managing Partner, Data-Driven Marketing for OMD Hamburg, GmbH. So Mark evoked trust and privacy as an essential component of the value exchange between advertisers and consumers. Our panel is about how we can ensure that privacy remains a core focus for the industry when the world is collapsing around us, when there are so many dramatic challenges, notably the pandemic, obviously, and all of its fallout, and the uncertainty about the future. And so I'd like to start with a short question, sort of a compound 2 questions for each of you. First of all, can privacy remain a core focus with everything else that's going on? And if it can each of you explain a little bit what you in your role and what your company is doing to ensure that it does remain a core focus, that it remains this strategic priority, and perhaps say a little bit about yourself and your role at the same time as you answer. So I'd start ladies first with Stephanie, OneTrust.
Thank you, Townie. Yes. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. Stephanie Hanson from OneTrust. So we actually build technology for privacy, including our CMP, amongst other tools. So we absolutely work with organizations and publishers who have made privacy a core focus. So yes, it can be done. And one interesting shift that we have seen is it's no longer just the lawyers who are driving this effort. We've seen over the recent years ad ops and programmatic teams embracing user consent specifically as an important component here. And I think privacy by design and a culture of compliance are crucial to incorporate into business operations today. And we have observed that our customers are rolling out new products, and as they're rolling out things such as streaming or OTT apps, they are addressing privacy as they build out those products as opposed to an afterthought like it may have been in the past. So I think we are seeing that core focus there.
A general message of doubling down and privacy being really integrated across the board inside the company and for the clients you're working with. How about Sascha from OMD? What's your take?
Hi, this is Sascha from the OMD Hamburg. I'm responsible for data-driven marketing there. And I'm quite sure that privacy has to become more and more a core focus of our business. In the past, I think it was a bit like a hygiene factor, but in the future it becomes really essential because not only the users are more sensitive, I think the advertisers, our clients, are more and more sensitive about that. And for us, we have a strong focus on data-driven advertising for years now. So we have to ensure 2 aspects. On the one hand, we have the consideration of privacy regulations. They become more and more tough, and also the technical issues. On the other hand, we have to implement precise and effective campaigns for our clients, for the advertisers. And so we build at the moment, and that's a longer process now over months and years, on 3 strategic elements. On the one hand, we try to help our clients to build up their first-party database, because these first-party database will become more and more relevant in marketing. We already heard that from Mark. On the other hand, we checking the future of opportunities for third-party data usage. It starts with ID alliances, with ID graphs, and goes to SSO solutions like the NetID in Germany. And the third very important element is to find data strategy which can work with less personalized data, or to build up targeting solutions and data strategy without the need of user data usage. That can be contextual, that can be alternative data, and so on, and so on, and so on. And so we have 3 relevant elements for the future to ensure data strategies.
Very interesting. And Stefan, how does it look from where you sit?
Yes. Stefan Hanloser, ProSieben Sat.1. So to answer, short answer to your question. So of course, privacy remains a top topic for us. So if you have strong and stable privacy compliance structures, then they also continue working during COVID. This is as a general notice. Of course, we were affected by the de facto postponement of TCF version 2.0. So entry into market 6 weeks delayed for COVID reasons. Of course, we had to adapt our strategic project-based privacy work to this new environment, but we are coping well. And yes, as a publisher in general, so not just for us, also my perception in terms of cooperation with other publishers, or also in business associations. So the strategic work on privacy topics and the adaptation and implementation of GDPR and e-privacy requirements, they continue quite well. Also, the exchange of views and the discussion in this area. So, yes, of course, it has impacted privacy, mostly with this with the decision to prolong the servicing of version 1.1. and the de facto later entry or market entry of version 2.0. But in general, so privacy continues to be a top topic, not just for us, but for most publishers, continuing to work and to comply with the requirements.
Yeah. Mark, anything you would want to add? It seems self-evident from your presentation that privacy is a core focus for Google right now, but anything you'd want to add in light of what you heard from the others at this point? I think you're on mute.
Yeah, no, of course, I second what most of the panel just said, especially what Sascha was saying about, one has to get the right controls in place, and one has to be, we all need to be educated about it, but transparency, control, and privacy all have to be a core part of every advertiser and every agency's business planning and usage, and going forward, we, as I said in my piece, we have to think about past practices. We'll talk about it perhaps in a moment, but some of the past practices that built the web growth that Daniel showed earlier were fantastic at that time, but they no longer can thrive and survive in the current market. They're not privacy safe, and they're not looking at the controls that suit the consumer, the modern day consumer. So no, I think we have to be better with data and use less of it, and actually we can be better with less.
That's a nice transition. Just apropos of consumers, we live in our company bubble and our industry bubble. I live in a Brussels bubble. In Suzanne's panel, there was an evocation, at least toward the end, of the deprecation of third-party cookies and the changes that would be likely to bring about, which we're all in the process of discovering, probably just at the beginning of that process. I'd be interested to know if my panelists think that consumers have any awareness of that particular change and how it might impact both their privacy and general consumer protection, but perhaps access to content on the web, or what other consequences there might be for them, to the degree that that they are aware. We'll take the same rotation. Stephanie, any thoughts on that question?
Yeah, Tony, I think generally consumers are not aware of the technical changes within the browser landscape. I do think, of course, we see a variety of consumers and behaviors. Some consumers will dig in when they're presented with the opportunity to explore everything that an organization knows about them. But generally, I think consumers still, want to and expect to explore the open web without considering the trail that they're leaving in their wake there. And I think that, we've seen through, for example, privacy rights, that organizations haven't been flooded historically with consumers looking for a deep understanding of what's going on. Now, that being said, I think consumers are interested in expressing a desire to build that trust, that we've been talking about, and to build that with particular brands or across different platforms. So I think we'll see that trend of trust continue, but I don't think that the consumer awareness is there at a technical level, nor will it get to that point.
How about Sascha? Any thoughts on the savvy or the unsavvy consumer's perspective?
Yeah, I think Stefan is absolutely right. I strongly believe the consumers are not aware what is happening out there. And I think that is a big problem for us, because the consumers see more and more consent walls. They have to give from week to week more detailed consents to surf the open web, to browse the open web. And I think they're becoming more and more frustrated. And they do not understand what happens and why it happens and who is responsible for that. And I think for that reason, it's a big danger for the advertising industry and for the publishers that the consumers have the wrong idea what happens there. So I think, it can be a need for us in the future to inform more and more the consumers out there what happens there, what are the reasons for that, and why it's to secure their privacy. And it's not the idea of the publishers to frustrate their internet behavior.
Really interesting. How about Stefan?
Yeah, of course. So it's such a complicated and multi-dimensional topic. So of course you can't expect the average user, the average visitor of our websites, of our different media, expect them to understand. So they are more confronted with the consequences. So this cookie consent fatigue and so on. So these are more the consequences of what is going on in the future. If third-party cookies should perish, then registration-based or registration requirements, login requirements, and so on. So it's more the consequences. But again, covering also the legal aspect, they are professionally represented by other bodies, like, for instance, the data protection authorities. So it's their job to protect the user and to somehow, when they take action, to also make a bit of a privacy impact assessment. So if we go in this direction, if we enforce in this direction, so what will be the overall consequence? So will it be, in the end, the outcome be privacy friendly, or are we pushing in the wrong direction? So for the user as such, of course, you can't expect this from each and every, from the average user. However, from those professionally being the advocates of user and data subjects' interests, you would also expect them to have the big picture in mind, and also to see unintended consequences if they sanction in this or sanction this sort of interpretation of GDPR and so on. So this is in short. So it's more the emphasis is more on the DPAs and their professional view and assessment of what how the market works, and how their interference with the market, what the impact will be on privacy and on the privacy level for all.
How about Mark? I think Google's done some research also on user attitudes that may inform your perception of whether.
Tom, well, as I said at the end of my piece, which is the internal research shows us that users prefer ads that are relevant. But to answer your real question, are the majority of users aware? I guess simply put, no. But it's important that making sure we don't look at users and consumers as one monolithic group, because I think, as both Sascha, as everyone just said, some are savvy and some aren't. But the majority of users outside of our digerati bubble, basically, they've got no idea what a cookie is. All they know is that they have to click on something when they want to buy something. And if they don't click on it, they don't get the same value exchange. So it comes back to the conversation I was having about value exchange. They know that if they want to continue on a site, they have to click on something called a cookie. They don't know what that is, but they do realize that by doing so, they've given something up. What they don't like, of course, is they don't like they don't mind retargeting. Actually, positive and contextually relevant retargeting is seen as a positive. What they don't like is the creepy pair of slippers following them around the internet. They don't like that at all. So they don't understand if what they've given gives them enough return. So, but what we do know is that users, they expect more now. And for example, last year in 2019, we saw on average 20 million visits per day to the Google account. The Google account where you can choose and adjust your privacy settings for your own account across all products. So, and 20 million users does show that whilst there's me going, it's just a digitality bubble and they don't know, that's a lot of people that are going, actually, I want to have a look at this and I want to try and do something about it within my controls. What they don't always realize, though, is by switching off certain things means that they get less personalization, and then they'll then get general mass advertising again, which is not arguably the value exchange that either advertisers, publishers, or users really want from the internet. So there's a bit of a juxtaposition there, and what we need to do is replace these legacy practices with new privacy preserving solutions in collaboration with the wider industry, which is why we set up our privacy sandbox, which is why we're working very closely with W3C, and that's why we're supporting Project ReArc. We need to find new solutions that support consumer, support publisher, support advertiser, and support the platforms.
Thanks. I think most of us are probably hooked into both the ReArc and the W3C work. IAB Europe and the national IABs certainly are. Would you be, so early days, but a fair amount of objective pressure, or a feeling that the timing to get to solutions is rather short? Would anyone be willing to hazard some guesses or share some insight on how you expect this to impact the industry, so both direct and programmatic? Why don't we mix it up, go backwards, and start with Stefan?
Well, of course, we're still assessing the impact. So, and of course, from a publisher's perspective, so what's always key is to have the direct relationship to your viewers, to your users, to your customers, and of course with the intermediaries in between. So the current ecosystem. There are always third parties who have better knowledge of and better insights into the wishes and expectations of your users than you as the publisher, so who has the ultimate relationship with the user, would expect to have. So therefore, for us, it's key to reclaim this direct relationship. And irrespective of whether this is under TCF or whether this is under a more registration-based model, which will be possibly the next step, or even with regard to the sandbox and Project ReArc, so that we have whatever interface or however this is technically managed, that it is clear that the direct communication and the direct exchange of information in both sides, so on both directions. So from us to the user and back from the user, from our direct client, from our customer back to us, that this is still works, and that we have the opportunity, no matter whether it's registration based, whether it's sandbox, whether it's ReArc, that the publisher can still establish this direct relationship with those consuming or their information, entertainment or education content. So I think this is what the key focus for us when observing and contributing to Sandbox and ReArc is to maintain this direct relationship and to maintain direct access to whatever technical means, some direct interfaces also, which need to be maintained. This is absolutely key.
Thank you. Sascha, anything you would call out with respect to challenges and opportunities that you would already see in the context of the Chrome Privacy Sandbox and this deprecation scenario landscape?
Yeah, perhaps I have a bit general view on this. For my opinion, and this is strongly demand-driven, the privacy discussion is a big chance for the industry, especially for programmatic. Why is this so? At the moment, we are very limited to running campaigns, to target people in a very limited user ID pool, cookie ID pool, a user ID pool, and we are very limited to the different devices. And when you find new targeting solutions, which are better with less, how Mark said, or who are not user-centric, which do not use these user data but other targeting options, then we have the chance to run programmatic campaigns and digital data-driven campaigns multi-channel out of a small user ID pool. And then we have the chance to run a really big, consistent multi-channel programmatic and data-driven campaigns. And I think with that, digital advertising can be much more precise, much more effective, and this is the big chance, especially for the advertisers and for the feeling the consumers have when they are using the publisher sites and seeing ads.
So you see a lot of opportunity, and sort of that's a bullish perspective. That's fun to hear. How about Stephanie?
Yeah, absolutely. Would echo both Mark's points about the opportunity to increase the knowledge around the value exchange, as well as what Stefan was sharing with the opportunity for that incremental first-party data. Another opportunity from where I sit in the very privacy-centric world is, one of the key challenges in privacy today is navigating the differences in regulations and enforcement across jurisdictions. So I'm very optimistic about the opportunity here that we may get some further standardization or alignment here. Since the browsers themselves are generally used across borders, this could be a great step in that direction of a more standardized approach for transparency and consent around the globe. Now, of course, we're not going to go to a strict opt-in model that might reduce revenue in markets where we don't need that. But I am, as I said, optimistic that we may get a little more standardization, so we're not using TCF over here and opt-outs for do not sell and CCPA over here. And there's just a lot of fragmentation right now that I think could be leveled out a little bit.
Thank you. So yes, my boss in the control room has flagged that it's time for the question. So the question for our panel: has privacy remained a key priority during COVID-19 for all of our participants? So please tick a box: increased, remain the same, or decreased. We're not allowed to vote as panelists. So while the fans are doing their voting, maybe it's interesting to follow up on Stephanie's observation of what sounded to me as if what you were saying is that one may get to some kind of, in effect, global harmonization of regulatory approaches via technology. Like I think we think about the immense challenges of trying to harmonize across jurisdictions, taking it straight on from a legal point of view. But it just looks like such an epic task. What do the others feel about either the likelihood of the industry converging on an approach to privacy and data protection that has some common principles and agreement on user rights? What are the chances of our getting there as a global industry in sort of the short term?
Well, Townie, if I can jump in on that, because I think the reality is that it's essential that we take this opportunity to shape the future for advertising and digital advertising. As everything I just said, as we come out of COVID, behavioral patterns of consumers and the consumption of digital is only going to be increased and enhanced. Of course, the levels may subside a little bit, as Daniel talked about, but it's up to us to ensure that we set the pace. To some extent, you know, third-party cookies was part of the last 10 years. Going forward, we need to find new ways that are privacy safe and ensure that the regulators are not hounding us, that we are setting the rules. And that means that whether that's Safari, Firefox, Chrome, you know, working consistently together, that's why we created, or Chrome created the Privacy Sandbox and worked closely with W3C to ensure that REARC, IAB, all other players, you know, come together and share ideas. We don't have the answers just yet, but we've got to find routes forward that ensure that we control our own agenda. And I think we can control our own agenda if we set trust and privacy as the highest bar. We stop bombardment. We stop, you know, volume and repetitive frequency that sets someone's distrust. We stop the creepy following and retargeting, but we really center in on the value exchange that we're talked about, and we can do that now with first-party data. I'm not saying that first-party data is the only solution going forward here, but if we work together to have a consensus, and as Stephanie said, you know, browsers across borders have to work together so that we have, you know, singular standards. I generally think it's a global issue, and you know, from a European point of view, with such digital maturity, you know, we really should play our part in that global conversation.
Sorry,
You're on mute.
Well,
Sascha, you seem to be.
Just maybe just one word. So of course, yeah, of course you see a certain shift in legislative power to W3C, REARC, and so on. So of course there is some factual lawmaking or may come out, but if this should be or must be or should be accepted also by the various European stakeholders like the DPAs, also who ultimately enforce what is going on. It's all about inclusion. So big chance, of course, that the industry on a global scale sets the rules, but of course it's a big challenge to have everybody on board, those who take ultimate decisions like DPAs and so on. So this shift in legislative power has definitely positive aspects, but it needs to be done right. And this can only be achieved by inclusion of the various stakeholders and also those who ultimately then enforce the GDPR, e-privacy, and whatever might come out in line with those principles developed in W3C, Sandbox, or REARC, so that there's no friction and that this all goes hand in hand. And otherwise, we won't achieve a global or some global principles, at least, of privacy in the online advertising.
Thank you, Sascha. It looks as if you agree that we will converge in our behavior in a way that will align to some of the regulatory pressures.
Yeah, as we heard, it's very important to come back and at the steering to come back into control in this discussion. That's really important for our industry, and for that, I think it's important to understand what happens, why it happens, and to change our attitude or our vision in digital marketing. Over years, we had the third party idea, third party cookie idea, and we had the idea more data is better, more data helps more. And I think we have to accept that there's a big issue for a lot of countries, Germany for special, but also other countries, that we work with less data. And when we accept this and find ways to be more effective with less data, then we can go into the discussion, then we can go back into steering, and then we can control what happens in our industry. I think that's very important.
Excellent. All right, so the poll results are in, and we're basically out of time, so just a quick readout. So 30% of our audience consider that privacy, if anything, has become more important. 56% believe it's remained the same. Only 14% say it's decreased in importance. That will be good news for our the lady from the French DPA who follows us in a few minutes. I would just want to thank very much for the wonderful insight, all of you, Mark Howe, Stefan Hanloser, Stephanie Hanson, and Sascha Dolling, and hand back to Constantine.